So let us get started to our next coaching session. Today, we're going to start with mindset. I'm really excited to talk about mindset because the mindset is extremely important to understand. There is a body of technology that exists in terms of the right mindset and setting your proper goals and executing on them and having a better understanding of proper goal setting and the structure of it is going to not only increase your success in this program and any health program, but really any endeavor in your life. And so this is going to be all about how to help you implement some successful strategies in proper goal set. And it all starts with the mindset. So, okay, the first step may sound silly and basic, but it's a big deal because it all starts with your goal. You need to have a clear goal with yourself in terms of what you're trying to accomplish with this program. And like I said, anytime you set a goal in any program that you're embarking on. So the initial aspect of setting a goal, you may have experienced in the past where you have this self-limiting reaction, right? Where you're sitting there and contemplating the goal. And this happens with weight loss very often. I see it all the time, and I've seen it over the decades. I've experienced it myself, especially because I remember back when I first lost my 100 pounds, and I remember the day that I made the decision. And, you know, it's a self-limiting mechanism that we implement on ourselves out of fear of failure. And so we have to erase that. We have to get that out of our mindset because while it might be difficult to execute on every single goal to a high degree, you do have the ability to shoot very high. And why wouldn't health be the thing that you shoot the highest? So I love the expression of shoot for the stars and end in the clouds. And that's very important, I think, and hopefully you agree when it comes to your health. So when you're doing this activity, take 5 minutes, put your phone away, nice comfortable space, and just be with yourself in that moment and contemplate your goals. Whatever that is, you should hit a point where you brighten up. You should literally feel better when you finally hit the real goal and allowed yourself to push past those self-limiting barriers, okay? Should take 5 minutes, could take a half hour, could take longer. Be honest with yourself and look for that confirmation of feeling brighter and feeling like you've actually hit that point of what you really desire, okay? All right, so we have our goal. Step number 2 is the why. So the why is generally, most of the time, a very emotional thing, right? Especially when we're talking about weight, we're talking about health, right? They go hand in hand together. So when we're talking about the why, we just ask ourselves that question, why do I want to lose this weight? And you're going to arrive at some answer. And when you get to that answer, you ask yourself again. And I know this sounds silly, but bear with me. Keep asking yourself why, on the why, on the why, on the why. And you are going to arrive at an endpoint where there is no more why. And you might actually find yourself getting very emotional when you do this. This is good. This is okay. I don't want you to necessarily to cry or get emotional, but you may. And I'd rather warn you now, this is a good thing. Don't analyze it. Don't think about it. Don't stress about it. Just let yourself be in that moment for resonating with the why behind why you're trying to do this. And 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you need to experience that emotion and let that wave ride. Okay? So we have the goal. Now we've arrived at that why. So now let's bring it into existence. And this is crazy, this is wild, but you can manifest it, you can bring it into existence. I think of a great book, if you guys haven't read it, it's Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. This is a very powerful book that does not just apply to business, hence the name Think and Grow Rich, but this applies to all aspects of your life. And this is where many books have expanded and added all sorts of various things, but this is, from what I've seen, the most powerful and original source of manifestation and what it can do. And so we literally can create our goals if we understand how to do it. And it's not that hard. Literally, it's affirmations, right? So the affirmations can be a whiteboard, it can be sticky notes in your by your desk, maybe in the window by your, in your bathroom, wherever you know that your face is going to be looking and you are least likely to forget, right? And your goal is going to be to read that goal and that why twice a day, in the mornings and sometime before bed, right? Ideally in that hour that we talked about, if you've seen my sleep biohacking video, that hour where you're doing your bedtime prep, that would be a great time to start that hour by reading your goal, and then first thing sometime in the morning, right? When you write this out, you don't need to overcomplicate it. You don't need to stretch it out. In fact, in the beginning, I recommend you keep it simple. Let's just focus on this goal of your health. What the goal is, if there's a couple of them, great, and what that why is. Clear and concisely, and be as definitive as possible. And that's what you're going to be reading. It's very wild. It usually takes about 3 to 4 weeks. But there's this sweet spot that happens if you can be somewhat consistent with 3 to 4 weeks of doing this, where all of a sudden now your space around you changes. And the science on this is very wild. Like, you have a part in your brain called the reticular activating system. Like, if you imagine on the day-to-day, there's so much sensory input that we're experiencing. It's millions of bits of data that we are bombarded with, that the brain can actually process. Millions of bits of data every second. But your conscious mind can only process about 40 to 50 bits every second. Huge disparity, right? So if it wasn't for this reticular activating system, we would literally explode, right? Like I say that jokingly, but I mean, we couldn't even imagine to trying to pay attention to that much data at once. So the reticular activating system is what we've evolved to do this for us, and it does this for us on all of those things that instinctually and innately are very important to us, right? So to see this in motion, think about a time where maybe, I always use the example of a car, where you were really, really excited to purchase a car at some point in your life. You think about driving on the freeway, you only saw that car so many times, but then you finally bought the car, or you made the decision to buy the car. It's one and the same thing. And all of a sudden now you're driving on the freeway and you notice that car significantly more often. Like it's kind of crazy. You're like, what's going on? Is there all of a sudden more, Camaros or Jeeps or whatever your favorite car is, or whatever you purchased, right? And it's like, no, your reticular activating system is now putting more attention on something that is now important to you because you either made the decision or you actually purchased it. So there's brain chemistry that's changing when you put something into that important bucket, right? Wouldn't it be so awesome if we can just flip a switch and say, I want that to be important? Because once it gets in there, it's happening on its own, guys. But this is exactly what the book and what I'm teaching you now, which is the tenets. In order for you to get something in there, we have to create it. And I've found that affirmations are the most powerful way to bring things into existence, AKA put them into that reticular activating system, so that you are automatically, without the need for additional daily conscious effort, doing the things that are necessary to hit your goal, right? And specifically for us, this would be the things that are leading to a successful fast, getting our exercise in, managing our stress, taking our supplements, and just being successful with the things that we are implementing for not just weight loss, but for optimal health. Okay, so this is the tenets and the technology that I have found to be most successful for proper goal set and the mindset that it takes to create it. So now we can talk about fasting, right? Because there is going to be, and many of my warriors here who've been with me longer have experienced it. Now, tirzepatide is awesome and it helps a lot, but have experienced powerful bouts of hunger, even on tirzepatide, right? And I've gotten those texts and I've talked to a lot of you. So there is a mind over matter aspect here, and this activity that we just talked about is going to handle about half of it. And then the other half of it is just understanding some additional aspects. The most important aspect is to understand this: you will not die. Like, I say that as a joke, but I say that seriously. I can take 1,000 people, throw them on an island, non-diabetics, right? There are certain situations, but I can take the majority of people, put them on an island with some water and some electrolytes. No one's gonna die. 3 weeks, very likely. Even athletes can last about 3 weeks without food. And what's crazy is on the other side of those 3 weeks, we're talking reversal of diabetes, remission of autoimmune diseases. I mean, just some amazing changes in the body. It's very wild. But the difficulty during those weeks are unimaginable, right? They are going to be different person to person. And so we have to understand that, though, the concept of I am not my body, right? The hunger is the hunger. And once you live it and once you go through it, you then realize, wow, like I'm the thing that's controlling my body. The hunger is my body. Understanding the difference between the two is very powerful, because the sooner you understand that, the easier it becomes for you to be able to tell your body, however you want to communicate with it, that you realize it's hungry, but it's okay because you're not going to eat. And it's that's the actual technicality of what people probably mean when they say mind over matter. But understanding that you are different than your body is very, very important. And now you have the subconscious benefit because you've manifested it and you've created it from the activity that we just talked about it. So now we got to understand that it's okay to be hungry and that you're not going to die. You're not going to pass out. It's a very, very rare phenomena. And you can be conservative with yourself if you want and work yourself into that territory, that space. Let yourself play with the feelings of being very hungry and push the envelope with yourself at whatever rate you are comfortable pushing yourself at, and get better and better at it. Okay, so, and I also want to share the aspect of the reward and the satisfaction of accomplishing a fast and being hungry and persevering through it. There's a tremendous amount of benefit to just accomplishing that. You look back at it the next day, you wake up in the morning because you're less hungry, right? And there is a satisfaction. And this is good because this is, again, you realizing how much more powerful you are over your body. So enjoy those wins, separate yourself from your body, and let yourself experience that difference. So now I will add that it's important to understand that there are some tricks that you can also implement in addition to those as well. Fasting when you're busy just goes without saying. Like, when I plan a long fast, I try to plan during activities, because no matter what, it's just easier when I'm busy. And so it goes without saying that you are going to make it more difficult for yourself when you plan a fast during free time or when you plan a fast when you're not busy. Not saying that isn't something you could do, but now you're just making it even more challenging than maybe you need to, because you're not at that point yet. Maybe let's keep that mental challenge for the future when you get really, really good at this stuff. But in the beginning, let's be strategic here and try to plan our fast for when we're busier, because it's just going to make things easier, especially in this early stages of the FLOA protocol. Now, I still want you guys to understand what hypoglycemia looks like and what symptoms are potentially dangerous. And if these symptoms happen, to just call it quits in that moment to be safe, right? Because the hunger is the hunger, right? And you're gonna get some insane hunger, but if that's all you get, or if you get a little bit of fogginess or tiredness, that's all fine. It's up to you and how much of that you wanna endure, but none of that to me is concerning. The things that I would say, once you start experiencing or notice, yes, you should call it quits and document how far into that fast you were able to make it, right? And so increased heart rate, shaking, sweating, nervousness and anxiety, irritability, confusion. If you are checking your blood sugar, levels lower than 70 is what the literature says, but a lot of you, if you're checking your blood sugar, are floating around 60s. So I would say the blood sugar level that's lower than what you are used to seeing is the bigger concern. But anything less than 70, especially if it's your first time, you should be more cognizant and be more aware and be less distracted, especially if it's early, just to build some comfort around your understanding of where your body's at and what symptoms of hypoglycemia or low blood sugar are manifesting that are just normal and okay versus what's concerning, right? You learn that and you become better and better at it. Very few of us are diabetics, and so this is such a minuscule problem, but I want you guys to understand that nonetheless, because it's always important to be safe. Okay, fantastic. So that is it for the topic of proper mindset and how we can apply that to our benefit when it comes to fasting. Intermittent fasting versus prolonged fasting. Would fasting daily versus weekly be an option on this protocol? Meaning having a window of eating more like essentially a 7-hour fast every single day. The quick answer on that is it will likely not be enough, because what you're talking about is intermittent fasting. When you shorten your daily window of eating, but you're still eating every day, you are talking about intermittent fasting. You don't break intermittent fasting till you break, some people say 36, some people say 24, and that's when you get into the prolonged space, right? So I'm not saying that intermittent fasting isn't good. And intermittent fasting could be enough for people that are less insulin resistant, less inflamed, right? Farther away from obesity. But the more you are on that side of the spectrum in terms of insulin resistance and diabetic and obese, the deeper you are going to need to go into the fast in order to heal from the insulin resistance. It's very important to understand that concept. The other thing to understand is even if you are, because remember we've talked about the stages of fasting. Stage 1 is intermittent. Stage 2 is implementing 2 24-hour fasts spread out throughout the week, about 3 days in between, 24-hour. And then all the other days you're still doing the intermittent fasting. That's barely stage 2. The flow stage, which is the most powerful stage, that's 48 plus, doing that every single week. And I know that sounds daunting or challenging, the person that probably asked that question, which is why they're asking, can they just do stage 1? But I promise it's going to get easier. It is going to get easier the more rounds of fasting you do, and as you progress through those stages, however long it takes to get you to that 48-hour stage. So the other aspect that we need to consider too is if we are doing the minimum amount of intensity of fasting. In other words, if I can get the results, so I have some insulin resistance, I have a lot of weight to lose, right? I am able to get the results on stage 1 only, okay? Here's an example of a similar situation. If I can get the results off stage 1, 24-hour fast a week, do I need to go into stage 2? And this is very important to understand. So another way to rephrase this question would be, do I need to go into the flow stage if I don't have to, right? If I can get the results without having to go into the flow stage, why would I do it? Well, this will benefit you tremendously more when you get to the other side of the weight loss and you are embarking into the flow lifestyle, right? The flow lifestyle is what most of you are looking forward to. I'm assuming why you're in this program is because we told you not only are we guaranteeing the results, but we're going to get you to the other side of this weight loss and have a format where you're able to maintain your weight and it's easier, right? Well, how do we do that? In order for you to be able to, in the future, live the flow lifestyle, the most important aspect of the flow lifestyle, which is maintenance, right? Maintenance in an easy format, is you have to be able to do a long fast every so often. And it's a very broad range because you're going to have months where you're doing really good in terms of your exercise and diet, and you're going to have months where you're doing really poor. And so you dictate how often you should do a 48-hour fast when you're looking to maintain your weight. Every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, every 4 weeks, every 5 weeks, a 72-hour fast, every 3, every 4, every 5, every 6. And as you've heard me talk about before, the variability I think is good. If you like the consistency, great. If it's working for you, 148-hour fast every 3 weeks and that just works for you, great. But allow it to vary if life throws a curveball at you, because I actually think you're going to get a greater benefit by throwing variability at your body. You guys have heard me talk about that in the program, as well as now we're talking about it in the flow lifestyle. So going back to why should I go into the flow stage? What's going to make it easier for you to do long fasting in the future when you're off the medications, you're off the peptides, or maybe you never use the peptides or medications at all and you just got there through supplements, right? Is the three things that makes it easier for you to fast in the future and live the flow lifestyle is higher amounts of insulin sensitivity, increased metabolic flexibility, and decreased inflammation. And while you're going to get those in the example that we just talked about, the 24-hour state, only going into stage 2 because I'm getting the results and I'm happy with the results, right? If you push it to stage 3, in that scenario, you will get more metabolic flexibility, better reduction of inflammation, and most importantly, maximal improved insulin sensitivity, aka reduction of insulin resistance. And you guys should get the maximum of those 3 things that you possibly can, because if you do, you're going to have an easier time fasting in the future, and that is why it's going to be easier for you to sustain your weight loss. So in summary, we want to maximize the improvements to our health in order to make it easier to do the long fasting in the future. That is the cheat code, that is the secret sauce to maintaining your weight in the future. So, and it's not just insulin sensitivity. All 3 of those changes play a role in that. The reduction of the inflammation, becoming more metabolically flexible. It just happens to be that insulin sensitivity is the most important, as you guys know by now with the hormonal theory of obesity. So that's it. That's the answer to that question. And so let's kick some butt, guys. Let's push ourselves into the flow stage and get the best possible results that we can. Okay, do you need to go into a 3rd day if we have stalled in weight loss? No. So you don't want to, if you've stalled in weight loss, guys, meaning, how do we define a stall on weight loss? 2 weeks of less than 1%, not 1 week, 2 weeks. 2 weeks means you've stalled, and that does not mean go harder in the fasting. I love the mindset, Nancy, I do, but we do not want to push ourselves, because why you've stalled is you're likely in a plateau, and we got to get you out of that metabolic plateau before we push you back into the program. So I would recommend that you revisit on the Welcome to the Weight Loss form the part about the reset. And if you need some guidance in the reset, you can shoot a question to the Flow hotline, and then we basically can give you that initial calorie starting point and then do a 3-week reset and then get back to it. And you have all the instructions on how to do that there. There are 3 stages of fasting in the Flow protocol. Stage 1 is intermittent. Stage 2 is intermittent every day for 5 days plus a 24-hour and a 24-hour, right? 3 days apart. And then the flow stage is 48 once a week, 48 or longer, 1 long fast, and still doing intermittent if you can. And we've talked a lot about that. If you can't because you can't eat enough because of the appetite suppression, then that's fine. But the flow stage is getting that singular 48-hour fast per week. So we had a question regarding AOD interaction. I've been using a continuous glucose monitor this week, and I've noticed a latent glucose response to the AOD troche. Nothing crazy, about a 20-30 point increase. Curious as to why. Yeah, so that's, thank you for sharing that with me. Actually, I have not seen that reaction, but what's so fascinating about blood sugar spikes is as much as we have some understandings about generalities in terms of what's going to cause a blood sugar spike in people, right? There's so much individual variability, and I'm actually starting to consider incorporating continuous blood glucose monitors into my program. I have gotten tremendous results without it, so it hasn't really been a huge point for me to incorporate, but there is individual variability that I'm starting to understand as I dive into the literature, and I think it can be beneficial. And it's really more of it's more of like icing on the cake at this point. Like if you have the money to invest into it and it's great, you might learn some additional insights that can help you maximize your results. Most of my patients have been getting great results without it. So with that being said, think about the mechanisms of action with AOD. AOD 9604 is a fragment of the human growth hormone, and it mobilizes body fat. And it mobilizes the body fat, providing an energy source to your body. So I can only guess, understanding the mechanisms of that and how your body processes fat, is that in reaction to additional fat being available to process, right? There's an entire process in which the fat moves through various physiological processes where it becomes available energy to you, ultimately glucose that your body uses. So in essence, the spike in glucose is the freeing up of energy that the body has mobilized from the body fat. That is only a theory and a guess. I will certainly delve into that with some additional clinical pharmacists, but I did get an opportunity to ask one, and they had no data on it. They'd actually never seen that. And like I said, I've never seen that. So I'd be interested if you notice that continues to happen, let me know, or if that was like a one-off, because that's a very interesting phenomenon. Okay, let's take a little dive into autophagy. We have talked about autophagy, and so we're going to do a deeper dive today. So what is cellular autophagy? Well, to answer your question, Amy, yes, autophagy is, from what we understand, what scientists understand, is at least part of the anti-inflammatory process. There is other aspects of reducing inflammation that fasting does by modulating the immune system, by turning off overactive inflammatory processes. But when you look at all those different things, are they all happening because the cellular autophagy? That's likely the case. That's such a complex question, and to be able to decipher exactly from literature, I mean, that would be a pretty awesome study to hopefully be done one day. I think so. I do think that the inflammation reduction comes from the cellular autophagy. So what is cellular autophagy? Cellular autophagy, literally the name itself, autophagy, stands for self-cannibalism, right? This is a mechanism that the body does for survival. And I've talked about this in so many other formats. Challenging the body, creating an initial stressor is what produces positive results. And autophagy is one of the most powerful aspects. I think it's secondary to the insulin resistance healing. But after you become very insulin sensitive in the future, cellular autophagy is probably at that point more important, because you don't need as much fasting for insulin sensitivity maintenance, but now you're fasting for cellular autophagy to stay as healthy and as cleansed as possible. So why does the body self-cannibalize? Well, we have 3 macronutrients in the body. 3, and that's it: carbohydrates, fat, and protein. There is no other energy source to us. There are micronutrients, which are very important, but energy, it's protein, fat, and carbohydrates. Protein has a completely additional benefit that is essential for life. Protein provides the building blocks of our body, right? Our organs, our systems of tissues, and tissues are systems of cells. And cellular components are cells. Then we have trillions of cells in our body. And what is the building blocks of those cells are amino acids. So amino acids are the basic building blocks of our tissues and of our bodies. Side note, we've talked about amino acids and chains of them being called peptides, and that's actually what the body releases. And we've talked about injecting peptides. I just wanted to put it all together, that peptides are short chains of amino acids. But going back to cellular autophagy, the amino acids are required by your body, and you would die if you didn't intake essential amino acids, okay? That's a separate death from lack of energy. You would at some point die by not intaking essential amino acids. But we have evolved some pretty amazing mechanisms, and cellular autophagy being one of them. So in response to a lack of intake of amino acids, and your body, because your body does store a certain amount of amino acids, but after it goes through the amino acids that it has in reserve, which is not much, 18 hours, 24 hours, depending on what sources you look at, then your body needs to recycle. It needs to get more amino acids. And so it gets more amino acids, in essence, by breaking down non-essential tissues. So now we got to think, okay, our body is a very complex, trillions of cells. Tissues and organs are the result of large clumps of those cells. Trillions of cells, okay? So within those trillions of cells, you can say that you could, let's say, arbitrarily rate the vitality of each cell. Like how good, how healthy is each cell, right? You could say that. We can give it a scale of 1 through 10. At any given moment, you're going to have a certain percentage of your cells in the 9 to 10 range, some are going to be in the mid range, and some are going to be in the low range. That's okay, and that's normal, right? And a healthier person would have, if you took the average of vitality and health status of each of those cells, a healthier person is going to have a higher average. And an unhealthier person is going to have a lower average, okay? So we know that. So non-essential tissues would be those cells that are closer to death. And your body has, it's wild how genius your body is, but it could recognize that. And it does recognize that when you're not eating protein, AKA when you're fasting. So when you're fasting, your body goes, okay, I have some essential tissues, my brain, my lungs, my heart tissue, like I'm not letting any of those break down. I gotta provide a steady stream of amino acids to those organs. And so your body begins to break down cells that are somewhere in that range of 1 to 4 in that overall vitality scale. Because it goes, we don't need these cells. They're gonna die. They were gonna die eventually, right? But now we just essentially kill them faster. We cannibalize them. We break them down. We recycle them. And we recycle them to amino acids to be able to provide a steady stream for our essential tissues. That is what cellular autophagy is. And this is why fasting is such an amazing intervention, because you are literally rebuilding your body. You are healing your body on a cellular level by fasting, because your body has to do this to survive. So this is why it reduces inflammation at that point, because the less cells that are in that lower stage of vitality that we have, the greater degree of inflammation that is existent in our body. And we know how detrimental to our health inflammation can be. By the way, guys, I'm so happy while you guys are thinking about questions, I'm so happy that we got that group chat going. I'm about a week away from launching FLOA University. Guys, you have lifetime access to FLOA University. I'm super excited for that. What is FLOA University? FLOA University is the organized approach towards the flow protocol, broken down. It's a course teaching them the tenets of the flow protocol, which you guys all get lifetime access. And I will continue to update that all the time. So be on the lookout for that. Super excited about that. And when would you extend your fast beyond 48 hours? Okay, so I would extend the fast beyond 48 hours, not when you're in a plateau. We talked about that earlier, but you want to do that as a variable. Remember, we talk about when you are getting good results in the flow protocol, to continue to get good results, you want to switch it up. You want to throw variability at your body. So when you're flowing and you're getting good results and you are not anywhere near a plateau, that's, Nancy, where you want to throw in a long fast. You throw in a long fast like a 72-hour. You get that mental challenge, you get that toughness from accomplishing it, but you also shock the heck out of your body and you keep the results flowing. I would not keep a 3-day fast consistently. Some of you can do that. I recommend a weekly 3-day fast if you have a lot of weight to lose. I certainly am not saying that if you don't have a lot of weight to lose that you can't play with a couple weeks of 3-day fasting in a row if it's really working for you. But I will say this, if you are going to experiment with a 3-day fast every single week, then you only have 4 days to prevent the plateau, right? You guys have learned about the plateau, which happens if you fast and you undereat. So if you fast for 3 days every week, you have to be in a little bit of a surplus, in my opinion, on those 4 days. And then you're gonna have one day where you're recovering. And so you're not even gonna be able to eat high that day. So you just, be careful with the 3-day fast. It's definitely an option for my more obese patients, but you can play around with it and see how you do with it. So there is a medical hotline, Nancy. If you text the FLOA hotline, we can text you the medical number. I'm on my phone, otherwise I would just tell you guys that phone number, but we have the medical line. So pretty much everything that you guys need as far as coaching, you do through the FLOA hotline, outside of the Facebook group and all that. But if you have a question about an order status, a prescription status, the FLOA hotline is not that team. So they're just gonna direct you to the medical line. So there's 2 phone numbers that I want you guys to save. The medical line, if you text the FLOA hotline, they'll text you that number because I don't have it handy on my phone right now.